Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Marcus Jefferson, a black man in his 40s, known for his success in the business world, enters the restaurant, the Sterling Room, with natural elegance and quiet confidence. He has invested years of work and energy into building his reputation and fortune, but today he must face something that no wealth can fully protect: prejudice. As soon as he walks through the door, he feels the contemptuous gaze of the manager, Tom Harrison. Tom, a white man in his 50s, is known for his arrogance and obsession with control. He stands behind the counter, a condescending smile on his face, and assesses Marcus as if he shouldn't belong there. "Can I help you?" Tom asks, his voice cold. Marcus smiled politely. "I'm here to discuss a potential investment and get a close-up look at your property." Tom snorts, unable to hide his disdain. "Really? And who allowed you to walk around here like you belonged here?" He leans toward his employees and, with a theatrical gesture, points at Marcus as if he were an intruder. A few customers watch, intrigued by the rising tension. Feeling his ego threatened by Marcus's mere presence, Tom makes a decision that will seal his humiliation. He pulls out his phone and dials the police, ready to have Marcus arrested for trespassing. Completely unaware of the success, dignity, and authority of the man he is humiliating, he believes he is wielding power. What Tom doesn't know is that Marcus isn't just an ordinary investor. He's an influential entrepreneur, respected throughout the city, and this public humiliation is the beginning of a turnaround Tom could never have imagined. Marcus's calm and patience soon transform this scene of contempt into a lesson in dignity and power, demonstrating that true respect cannot be bought, it must be earned. Marcus Jefferson pushed open the door of the restaurant, the Sterling Room, with an almost imposing calm. The gleaming tiles reflected his perfectly polished shoes, and the chandelier above his head illuminated his serene face. Despite the elegance of the place, he immediately felt the tension in the air. All eyes seemed to be on him with suspicion, some curious, others contemptuous. Behind the counter, Tom Harrison, the manager, noticed him immediately. His eyes narrowed and his condescending smile spread. "Can I help you?" Tom asked sharply, as if every word was a challenge. Marcus replied with a polite but firm smile. "I'm Marcus Jefferson. I wanted to visit your facility and discuss a potential partnership." Tom burst out into a sarcastic laugh, attracting the attention of the waiters and a few customers. "Marcus Jefferson," he repeated, emphasizing the name, as if weighing each syllable to ridicule its bearer. "And you really think you can walk in here like you belong here?" A heavy silence fell. The customers exchanged awkward glances. Marcus remained upright, unperturbed. "I'm not asking for permission. I'm here as an investor and potential client." Tom took a few steps forward, his arrogance evident. "Show me your papers, Mr. Jefferson. Or should I call the police to verify that you are who you say you are?" At that moment, Marcus felt humiliation creeping up on him, but he didn't show it. He just smiled slightly and replied calmly, "I prefer to resolve things with respect and discussion rather than with accusations." Tom, oblivious to Marcus's dignity, picked up his phone and dialed the police, as the astonished employees and customers looked on. He thought he was in control, but Marcus, with his calm and natural authority, knew this was only the beginning of a lesson Tom would never forget. The sirens of injustice were about to sound in this place, but the true power was silently brewing behind Marcus's serene face. Tom Harrison, still flushed with anger and frustration, couldn't believe Marcus Jefferson would dare challenge his apparent authority. He raised his phone, dialing the police as the waiters looked on in shock. "Yes, hello. I would like to report a suspicious individual in my establishment. He claims to be a customer, but I'm not sure if he's legitimate," Tom said dryly, exaggerating every word. Marcus, still calm, watched the scene without losing his smile. He knew that every move Tom made only revealed his ignorance and arrogance. A nervous waiter whispered, "Mr. Jefferson, would you like to?" Marcus gently placed his hand on the waiter's shoulder to reassure him. "Let them be. I want to see how the situation is resolved." Tom turned to Marcus with a defiant grin. I advise you to stay here and cooperate. The police will check your papers. The customers began to whisper, some openly showing their astonishment at Tom's arrogance. Marcus, with majestic calm, advanced slightly towards the center of the room and said, in a calm but firm voice, I understand your concerns, Mr. Harrison. But I remind you that treating someone like this simply because of their skin color or appearance is unacceptable and legally risky. Tom, furious, felt the situation slipping away from him. The mental siren of humiliation was ringing for him, but for Marcus, it was time to prepare his response. The officers arrived a few minutes later, watching the scene suspiciously, influenced by Tom's biased account. Sir, can you identify who you are and why you are here? Asked one of the police officers, notebook in hand. Marcus replied courteously. I am Marcus Jefferson. I am here as an investor and visitor interested in your establishment. Everything can be verified with the corporate records. The officers exchanged glances, slightly confused by Marcus's confidence and clarity. Meanwhile, Tom was growing increasingly red with frustration, realizing that his plan to discredit the public was about to fail. Marcus knew at that moment that patience and calm would be his greatest allies. This wasn't just a visit, it was the beginning of a lesson for anyone who thought skin color could define a man's worth or authority. Marcus Jefferson stood in the center of the restaurant, his hands clasped behind his back, as the police officers questioned Tom Harrison and the waiters. Despite the palpable tension, Marcus showed no sign of nervousness. Every word Tom said, every contemptuous glance, every murmur from the customers was registered in his mind. He knew that true strength lay not in immediate confrontation, but in observation and self-control. He noticed the nervous gestures of some employees, the poorly concealed guilt of others, and especially Tom's suppressed anger. One of the police officers, puzzled, turned to Marcus. Mr. Jefferson, can you show us any document or proof of your legitimacy? Marcus calmly took out his phone and opened an email containing official company documents and bank details. Everything you need is here. You can check every piece of information. The officers exchanged glances, visibly impressed by Marcus's preparedness and calm. Tom Harrison, however, was seething inside. With every passing second, his ego was exploding, and he felt his plan to discredit him had failed. Marcus continued to observe the scene, mentally noting every detail, the names of each employee, the customers' reactions, Tom's facial expressions. He knew all of this would be crucial to the next step, turning this humiliation into a moment of public instruction. After a few minutes, the police officers, seeing that Marcus was perfectly in order, politely thanked him and withdrew, leaving Tom red with anger and the staff feeling uneasy. Marcus, still calm, then addressed Tom in a calm voice. Mr. Harrison, I advise you to think about how you treat others. Respect is earned, and it does not depend on skin color or apparent status. Tom said nothing, clenching his fists behind his counter, unable to respond without showing weakness. Marcus took a few steps toward the exit, leaving behind a room that was silent but marked by the feeling that something had just changed. Marcus knew that this day was only the beginning. Patience and observation were his weapons, and soon the true power of the humbled man would become evident to all. Back home, Marcus Jefferson never gave in to anger, even though the humiliation he had just suffered was profound. On the contrary, he transformed this frustration into thoughtful energy. He knew that immediate revenge was neither necessary nor worthy of him. His plan had to be subtle, effective, and unforgettable. He sat down in his office, surrounded by files and photos of his various establishments. Every detail of his meeting with Tom Harrison was carefully noted, the exact words spoken, the facial expressions, the reactions of the employees and customers. This information would be crucial in orchestrating the perfect turnaround. Marcus then contacted a network of local journalists and influential contacts in the restaurant industry. Without revealing his full plan, he made it clear that a story of injustice and prejudice was unfolding at a prestigious restaurant, and that there was irrefutable evidence to prove it. Patience is key, Marcus repeated quietly to himself. He knew that power lay in timing and mastering information. The humiliation Tom Harrison believed he had inflicted would soon backfire, and Marcus, by remaining calm and dignified, would emerge magnanimously in the eyes of all. Meanwhile, Tom continued to boast to his friends and colleagues, convinced that he had put Marcus in his place. But he was unaware that every word he uttered was being carefully recorded by witnesses and clients, who had been impressed by Marcus's dignity. Marcus knew that when the time came, the entire community would discover the truth. The one who had been humiliated was in fact the one who held the true power. And Marcus would display this power with elegance, never getting his hands dirty in anger or blind revenge. This stage of patience and preparation was crucial. The real turning point lay not in the immediate confrontation, but in the ability to orchestrate the revelation that would leave Tom and the staff speechless, and Marcus victorious, respected, and beyond reproach. A few days later, Marcus Jefferson returned to the restaurant The Sterling Room, but this time his approach was different. He wasn't there for a confrontation, but to observe and prepare for the moment of revelation. He had contacted a few journalists and local influencers, discreetly arranging to meet them for a special event. Upon his arrival, the staff recognized him immediately. Tom Harrison, sitting behind the counter, frowned as Marcus entered with the quiet confidence that had so unnerved him. Marcus greeted the staff politely and settled himself in a corner of the room, like a watchful observer. A nervous waiter whispered, "Mr. Jefferson, are you still there?" Marcus replied calmly, "I'm always here, to observe and understand. Information is power, and every detail counts." Tom, unaware that Marcus had already prepared a public revelation, continued to pretend to rule the place, ordering the waiters around and looking at Marcus with contempt. But Marcus had already taken control of the situation in another way. He had invited the media and prepared a small event that would soon transform everyone's perception of the restaurant. At the appointed time, the journalists arrived and began taking notes and photographs. Marcus stood up and, with a calm but bright smile, addressed the gathering. "I believe it is important that everyone understands who I really am, not only for me, but for justice and respect in this place." He then showed the official documents proving that he owned several prestigious restaurants in the city, including a direct partnership with the owner of the restaurant they were in. Shock immediately appeared on the faces of Tom and the staff. Murmurs turned to astonishment, and Tom felt overwhelmed by the humiliation he thought he was inflicting on Marcus. "You see," Marcus continued, "dignity and respect don't depend on what you think you see in someone. They depend on their actions, their background, and how they treat others." The silence was complete. Reporters were taking pictures, customers were clapping softly, and Tom, red with shame, could think of nothing to say in response. Marcus had turned the initial humiliation into a resounding, public lesson, proving that true power lies not in arrogance or hatred, but in patience, preparation, and dignity. The day after the public revelation, Marcus Jefferson returned to the restaurant, but this time the atmosphere had completely changed. The employees, once confident and arrogant, walked with visible hesitation. Even some customers who had witnessed the humiliation the day before seemed curious, waiting to see Tom Harrison's reaction. Marcus entered with the same calm elegance, politely greeting each employee. Tom, sitting behind the counter, paled under Marcus's firm gaze. The manager, who had thought he held the power, suddenly realized he was the one who had lost control. Marcus approached the counter and, in a calm but firm voice, said, "Mr. Harrison, I think it's time to restore some basic respect here. This restaurant runs on employees and customers, not on arrogance or contempt." Tom stammered a few words, but Marcus didn't give him the opportunity to resume his role of illusory authority. The employees, inspired by Marcus's calm and dignity, began to realize the lesson. Some spontaneously came forward to apologize for their past behavior, while others simply watched, impressed by Marcus's composure. To ensure the message was clear, Marcus invited all employees to a short on-site meeting. He spoke about respect, dignity, and leadership, reiterating that racism and prejudice had no place in a professional setting. Every word was measured, every gesture demonstrated a natural authority that Tom could not challenge. The turnaround was complete when Marcus, with a serene smile, announced to the assembly, "From today on, we all work together in an environment of mutual respect. And for those who still doubt my legitimacy or integrity, know that I am ready to demonstrate it every day, through my actions and not through words." Tom, unable to answer, looked down. The staff understood that Marcus wasn't just an investor or a visitor, he was a leader, an example of dignity and quiet strength. The initial humiliation, which had seemed like a victory for Tom, had turned into a resounding public lesson. Marcus left the restaurant, leaving behind a respectful silence, punctuated by a few murmurs of admiration. That day, he had demonstrated that true power lies not in arrogance or hatred, but in patience, preparation, and dignity. A few days after Marcus Jefferson returned to the restaurant, the story began to spread throughout the city. Journalists and influencers he contacted published articles, photos, and videos, showing Marcus's initial humiliation and, more importantly, his dignity in the face of the situation. Marcus's name circulated on social media, accompanied by admiring comments about his patience, intelligence, and self-control. The story inspired many people to reflect on their own prejudices and how they treated others. Tom Harrison, for his part, tried to downplay the situation. He offered a few clumsy apologies to customers and employees, but most remained suspicious and embarrassed. The manager quickly realized that arrogance was no longer enough to restore his image. Every mention of his previous behavior reminded everyone of his attempt at humiliation. Marcus, aware of the impact of his actions, organized a meeting with the local media in a nearby cafe. Before an attentive audience, he explained, "This experience reminded me that respect and dignity are fundamental values in any interaction. Regardless of social status, skin color, or position in the company, everyone deserves to be treated with humanity." His words were applauded by the press and witnesses. Subsequent articles presented Marcus as a model of leadership and resilience, transforming a situation of injustice into an example of integrity and strategy. In the restaurant, Tom watched the fallout anxiously. He realized that his behavior had not only been publicly denounced, but had also strengthened Marcus's position as a respected leader. The manager, who had thought he was in control, now found himself in the shadow of the very man he had tried to humiliate. Marcus, for his part, continued to focus on his business, using the experience as a springboard to inspire his community and show that patience and self-control are sometimes more powerful than any direct confrontation. True power, Marcus believed, lies not in controlling others through fear or arrogance, but in the ability to turn adversity into opportunity and lead by example through one's own actions. Within weeks of the public revelation, Tom Harrison's life had changed dramatically. The once confident and domineering manager now felt the weight of his actions. Customers who had witnessed Marcus's humiliation avoided the restaurant, while new visitors, inspired by Marcus's story, flocked to the venue to show their support for the true leader. The employees, meanwhile, showed renewed respect for Marcus. Some even came to him for advice on their own careers, admiring the patience and dignity he had demonstrated. Tom, who had once wielded imaginary power, found himself isolated and mistrusted by those he supervised. One morning, Marcus decided to go undercover at the restaurant, observing the dynamics from afar. He saw Tom trying to lead the team, but his orders were now met with hesitation, even smirks. The employees' murmurs about Marcus's media event were constant. Every word Marcus had spoken in previous interviews weighed heavily on Tom's memory. Finally, Tom attempted a final gesture of control by calling a meeting with the staff. But Marcus, who had been invited as an investor to oversee the smooth running of the operation, calmly intervened. "Mr. Harrison, I believe this meeting should serve to strengthen mutual respect and collaboration, not to perpetuate fear or arrogance." Marcus's gaze, calm and implacable, forced Tom to fall silent. The manager realized he could no longer act with his former authority. Marcus, through his calm and strategic approach, had transformed the initial injustice into a genuine moral and social force. The lesson was clear: arrogance based on racism and fear is temporary. Patience, dignity, and self-control, on the other hand, leave a lasting imprint. Tom Harrison had just discovered that power can be lost in an instant, while respect is earned slowly and lasts forever. Marcus Jefferson's story didn't stay confined to the restaurant. Articles published by local journalists and videos shared on social media began to reach a much wider audience. Marcus quickly became a symbol of patience, dignity, and success in the face of prejudice. Local schools invited Marcus to speak to students, explaining how integrity and self-control can transform a situation of injustice into an opportunity for learning and respect. Community organizations approached him to organize workshops on leadership and equality, using his experience as a concrete example. In the restaurant, Tom Harrison continued to feel the repercussions of his actions. Employees now spoke openly of Marcus with admiration and, for some, even a sense of loyalty. Tom, isolated in his office, now had to listen and follow instructions he could no longer challenge without risking further loss of credibility. Marcus, meanwhile, continued to frequent the restaurant, but always with calm and discretion, allowing his influence to be felt without imposing his presence. Customers and staff alike understood that true leadership is not measured by the fear one inspires, but by the respect one commands. One evening, Marcus was invited to a municipal event where he received an award for his contribution to promoting respect and equality in the community. On stage, he said, "The story that put me in this restaurant might seem humiliating, but it gave me the opportunity to show that dignity, patience, and perseverance can transform an injustice into a positive example for all." At that moment, Tom Harrison, sitting at the back of the room, felt the depth of the lesson. What he had thought was a mere humiliation now turned into a dazzling demonstration of Marcus's moral and social power. The community had learned an important lesson: respect and dignity are not given through fear or appearance, but are earned through the actions and consistency of those who choose to remain upright in the face of injustice. A few weeks later, Marcus Jefferson arranged a final visit to the restaurant, the Sterling Room, this time for an official meeting with all the staff and regular customers. The atmosphere was different. There was no longer fear or contempt, but a respectful curiosity and a sense of justice restored. Tom Harrison, still reeling from the public humiliation and media fallout, was present. But this time, there was no arrogance in his gaze, only a quiet understanding of the situation. Marcus stepped forward, a calm smile on his face, and spoke. "We all have something to learn from this experience. Respect and dignity are not dependent on social status or appearance. They are cultivated in every interaction, in every decision, and are demonstrated in our daily actions." He urged Tom to publicly acknowledge his mistakes and commit to treating every employee and customer with fairness and consideration. Tom, his voice shaky but sincere, apologized. "Marcus, I recognize that I acted out of ignorance and prejudice. I am committed to changing and learning from this experience." The staff applauded, and even some customers stood up to show their support for Marcus and Tom's transformation. This moment of reconciliation symbolized the victory of dignity over arrogance, of respect over fear. Marcus, still humble despite his success and growing influence, concludes, "We all have the power to change our behaviors and inspire others. Injustice can seem overwhelming, but with patience, preparation, and integrity, it can be transformed into strength and example." That day, the restaurant became more than just a place to eat. It became a symbol of equality, respect, and thoughtful leadership. Marcus Jefferson walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind not only an indelible lesson for Tom Harrison and the staff, but also for the entire community that had followed his path. The initial humiliation, which seemed an insurmountable obstacle, had turned into a moral and social triumph, proving that true power does not belong to those who intimidate, but to those who know how to remain dignified in the face of injustice.